Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're jumping into this really powerful story out of Iranian Kurdistan. It's all about how the environment, the actual land, can become a battleground for identity, for culture, and for resistance. We're talking about land, nationhood, and one man who is right at the heart of it all.
Let's really start with these words from the man himself, environmental activist Sharif Bajour. He had this belief that protecting the environment, this seemingly neutral act, gave activists a kind of legitimate space to work in, even in places that were really heavily controlled. And as we're about to see, his life, and especially his death, would put that idea to the ultimate test.
So, let's set the scene. It's August 2018. Sharif Bajour and 3 of his colleagues are out there fighting a forest fire near the city of Marifan in Iran's Kurdistan region. And tragically, they're killed. But what happened right after? Well, nobody saw it coming.
We're talking about a huge public event. Their funeral just exploded. Thousands upon thousands of people poured into the streets, coming from all over the region. And here's the thing, this wasn't some quiet, somber funeral procession. No way. The air was electric, filled with chanting, and the slogans they were shouting, they were explicitly nationalist.
So this is the big question, right? This gets right to the heart of what we're looking at today. Why? Why did the death of 4 environmentalists, why did that specific tragedy strike such a nerve? How did it trigger this massive outpouring of Kurdish national identity? To get our heads around that, we really have to understand the bigger picture.
Okay, so according to the research we're drawing from, the answer lies in the fact that the political space for Kurds in Iran had been shrinking, and shrinking fast. Let's take a quick look back at how things got to this point.
So, the source lays out a pretty clear timeline for us. The late 90s, right? A time they call the reform era in Iran, where there was this brief window, a political opening that allowed Kurdish identity movements to operate a bit more freely. But then, fast forward to 2009. A major crackdown begins, and Kurdish political and cultural expression gets severely restricted. So what do you do when all the normal avenues are closed? Well, activism started shifting into these new spaces, spaces that, on the surface, didn't look political at all, like environmentalism.
And that's the key takeaway right there. Protecting the land became one of the last ways you could protect a culture. For so many Kurds, according to the research, this environmental work, it wasn't just about saving trees or cleaning up rivers. It was one of the only channels left for them to come together, to organize, and to express who they were.
Okay, and all of this brings us right to the core idea of this whole story, this really fascinating concept called eco-nationalism.
So what is eco-nationalism? Well, think of it like this. It's where love for your land and love for your nation basically merge into one single thing. The actual physical territory, we're talking the mountains, the forests, the rivers, it all becomes a powerful symbol of the nation itself. So if you're defending the ecosystem, you're literally defending the nation.
And check this out, this isn't just some abstract theory. The source actually backs this up with hard data. Researchers went through over 150 different documents from after Bajour's death, things like poems, public statements, eulogies. And look at what they found. The word Nishtaman, which means homeland, popped up 96 times. The word Kurdistan appeared 63 times. This language wasn't subtle at all. It was screaming national identity. And this slide just drives the point home perfectly. Just look at the slogans people were chanting in the streets. They weren't just saying, rest in peace. They were shouting things like, the protector of the forests became a martyr for Kurdistan. They were making a direct, powerful link between the act of protecting nature and making the ultimate sacrifice for the nation.
But you have to remember, this activism wasn't happening in a vacuum, right? It was a direct response to something the source calls the Iranian state's strategy of eco-terrorism, specifically in the Kurdistan region.
The research points out this really stark contrast in government policy. So you look at northern Iran, and the forests there are actually protected for national security. They're even given a 10-year rest period to recover. But then you look at Kurdistan, and the source alleges a completely different story, a policy of systematic destruction. We're talking about fires often being blamed on military exercises, and the activists who are just trying to protect their land, they're often suppressed.
And it goes way beyond just fires. The paper details all these other state-led pressures. You've got these massive dam projects, like the Darien Dam, which end up flooding ancient lands and forcing whole communities to move. You've got laws that make it easier to seize and transfer land. And of course, there are the direct arrests and detentions of the environmental activists themselves. So when you put all this together, it builds to one crucial point. In this incredibly charged environment,
The actual physical land of Kurdistan became totally inseparable from the idea of the Kurdish nation itself.
And Sharif Bajour, he saw it in exactly these terms. He said it himself. In his mind, the destruction of Kurdistan's environment wasn't some random accident. No, he saw it as a deliberate strategy, a direct attack on the future of his people and their homeland.
And this is what this whole story really boils down to. It shows us how, when a group is under immense political pressure, something like defending an ecosystem can transform into a profound act of political resistance. The struggle for environmental justice and the struggle for national survival, they just become completely intertwined. They're two sides of the exact same coin.
So this leaves us with a pretty big final thought to chew on. When all of the traditional ways of doing politics are silenced, when cultural expression is stamped out, what happens? Well, maybe the fight for the earth itself becomes the loudest, and maybe the last available voice that a people has.